Hey, welcome to the Restoration Soul Care Podcast, where we have honest conversations about faith, neuroscience, and hope. I'm Michael Camber, a relationship and recovery coach.
And I'm Nick Buddha, a mental health and relationship coach. If you feel stuck in shame, addiction, or pain, you don't have to face it alone. Join us for some real stories, real tools, and a real path forward. Let's dive in.
Hey, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today I'm with my dear friend, fellow recovery coach, Rodney Vaughan. Rodney has been doing this work for a number of years, and we've overlapped and collaborated on some cases. And at one point, we shared some common office space, so I could throw paper wads at the back of his head for a little bit. And he would, I would try to gaslight him. It wasn't me. He knew it was me. I'm kidding. That never happened. We did share an office. Rodney's been a good friend for a number of years. Like I said, we've collaborated on a handful of cases and been a part of some online recovery groups through Crosspoint. And it's been a joy to work alongside Rodney in this. And as I've gone through and started thinking about what this podcast can look like, again, as we're sort of talking through and trying to add more voices to this of people that we know, love, and respect, Rodney's one of those guys. So I'm excited to welcome him today and have a conversation about love addiction and what that looks like and how it's different from a pornography addiction. And it's not something we've covered yet today. So Rodney, I'm excited to dive in and talk about this.
Well, I'm excited to talk about the subject.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a lot of guys, at least in my experience, I don't know if you're seeing this as well, a lot of guys are coming in and have been labeled a sex addict, which I think fits in some respects, but the full label of being a sex addict is not as helpful. And what they get pulled away from is exploring more of the intimacy disorder side of it that you would see from having the label of being a love addict.
Yeah. I have encountered this a few times in coaching. You know, it's interesting. The majority of people that reach out, the first sentence or the first thing they say is, "Help, I'm a porn addict," or some variation of that phrase, which I think is fine out of the gate because I see people that come with that attitude trying to own whatever they've got going on, which is great. But it does, without fail, we start digging in. I start asking questions. They tell me their story. You can tell pretty quick out of the gate if this is actually the problem that they're sort of self-diagnosing or self-disclosing as a porn addiction. Because I think on the surface level, it all probably seems similar or feels the same. And if you haven't done any work or you're unfamiliar with sort of digging deeper into like what's going on in your story or your emotions, surface level, like it's just easy to label that because like we've at least got some categories for it in the church or even in culture that like, oh yeah, there's pornography, that's bad. Well, I use it more than I probably.
Love addiction is a behavioral addiction characterized by an obsessive or compulsive need for romantic relationships or validation from a partner, which is all, there's so much there. And I think leads a lot of, so there's what people don't understand about groups is, yes, the accountability side is so helpful in recovery groups for sure. And that's a big part of why you do it. But in good, healthy recovery groups, you also have a very intimate connection that develops where, meaning you see into the lives of the men that you spend time with. Right. And that out of that, them seeing you and staying with you through your pain and like saying, yeah, I want to show back up. You're a good man. I want to spend time with you is very validating. And that also helps calm that desire from validation in relationships with women. Right. So in an essence, like a good, healthy recovery group can treat both in my viewpoint. And I think that's why it gets confusing for some people to make the distinction between the two. And so that's why I argue, and I think with an intimacy disorder, whether it's like just straight porn addiction is one side of it, love addiction maybe is another side of it, and you can land somewhere on that spectrum. So for instance, younger guys that you may be working with or I'm working with who have had the smartphone since they were 5 years old, maybe, or had like access to pornography since they were 8 and have been habitually using it, yeah, they're going to be further on the like pure porn addiction side. Whereas like my story is porn's always kind of been there, but porn was a gateway to fantasizing about intimate connection with women. And a lot of times I was drawing in real life relationships. So porn was kind of what like we are men, so we do like visual stimulation is a very important part of the process. But then I would move to something that I thought was real because what I really was longing for was intimate connection.
Mm.
Not just the pleasure of like viewing porn and masturbating. Does that make
Yeah, it does. It does. Would you say that dopamine plays a lesser or greater role on that, if you want to stick to the spectrum avenue?
I think the intensity of the dopamine that you get from porn is more because of the bright. It's like the way I would describe it is, when a child watches something, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes here, but like Coco Melon, where it's like
If
bright,
you didn't say it, I
flashy,
was going
shiny.
to.
Yeah. So it's something that's designed to get intense, immediate dopamine reaction. Well, that's what porn's doing, right? Like if you're watching high production pornography, it's glossy. All the undesirables are edited out, right? The body imperfections are avoided. It's edited in such a way. There's an entire whole design behind it, right? That's kind of the scary part. And that glossy side of it can hit a high dopamine, but I think it's like it's flash. It doesn't feel real. Um, at least that's the way I would describe it to me. And so what you get from the love addiction, you're still getting the dopamine for sure. And I don't think it hits as intense, but I think it may be a little more longer lasting.
Mm.
It's still not satisfying or what you're looking for. But like it feels in some distorted way healthier, right? So this is something that came up. It was several months ago, but a guy I've been working with for a little while brought up ethical porn, which I was like, what? I've never heard that before. I don't know if you've heard of that, but apparently there's a side of the porn industry that's quote unquote ethical. Like women are treated right and not exploited and whatever. I mean, that seems nonsensical, right? That doesn't even seem possible, but
Right.
they're marketing that way. And I think that for people who have a conscience around that, sometimes that's attractive. It's like, well, if I'm going to look at porn, at least it needs to be ethical.
Yeah. Just like your coffee beans.
Yeah, fair trade. That's right.
Fair trade, organic, rainforest certified, you know, make sure your porn's on the up and up. I think you're right. It's a slippery slope. There's not like a safe amount or a safe uh, brand or a safe category of pornography. Like it's all harmful in some capacity, whether to the people producing it, doing it, making it, or the people consuming it. Like none of this is good. None of this is life giving, and it doesn't lead anywhere good. It's all just sort of this path toward, like you said, relational destruction of intimacy in real relationships.
Yeah, and that's ultimately like I would use my own fantasy world if I didn't look at porn and I just used fantasy of relationships that were real life to get to masturbation, that felt morally more ethical,
Right.
right? And on some level, I think from the addiction standpoint, I do think using porn from the dopamine side of the argument is more destructive. Got to be clear on that. Like using porn is higher up the scale as far as damage it causes. But your fantasy world, if you're just using that and not porn to masturbate, you're still causing intimacy or relational damage, right?
Yeah.
And that's like to move towards health is to move away from both porn and fantasy and masturbation.
And sometimes those paths cross and it gets extra sketchy. And just by way of an example, I had a client I met with one time who actually might be familiar with this specific scenario now that I think about it. Two married couples have been friends for a long time. One of the wives, one of the couples did photography, and a specific type of intimate photography, took pictures of the other couple's wife, and then those were stored on the computer. Husband found those and then used those to act out. That got really messy really quick, because now you've pornified, or you've used images of somebody you actually know in a pornified manner. Also, there's fantasy involved. Also, it's somebody you know in the real life that you have a relationship with, that your spouse has a relationship with. Whew. And that's a tricky scenario to work through. But even as I'm thinking about what this can look like maybe if you can give me like a good, maybe like hard line in the sand differentiator between this is how I might know if I'm specifically dealing with a pornography addiction, or this is how I might specifically know if I'm probably dealing with a love addiction and I'm just unaware of it and I'm just associating it strictly with pornography. Does that make sense what I'm asking? Like, what are some key features of that might be easier to recognize?
Well, I'd love for you to speak into this too if you have thoughts, but I think, first off, if you're just consuming porn, so this is something that I'm just not as familiar with in my story specifically, but there's a lot of conversation around the younger generations pursuing relationships with women, and so like actively pursuing porn and distancing themselves from relationships with women. I think
Yeah.
that's a clear sign of a more like deeper addiction to pure pornography. And that can branch out into a lot of different types of pornography there. And I think also just the inability to stop accessing it. So in more extreme cases, I think using it while driving, using it while, just a nonstop accessing it all day, just just going and looking at it just to look at it, even if you don't have space to masturbate, right? To kind of get a small high.
Yeah.
That's more of a clear sign of like a deeper porn addiction. Whereas I would say with the love addiction, it's much more relational. So you are kind of you're like, yeah, I don't look at porn as much as the other guy, but I'm at the gym a lot of times trying to like have conversations with women. I'm being more flirtatious. I'm, having inappropriate relationships with women at work or at church. Um, and I find myself kind of bouncing around. I always need to have uh, a woman that have some kind of romantic interest in. I would say that's more of a stronger sign of love addiction.
Would you say that it could result in you, and we'll just stick with the example of a guy for right now, developing sort of multiple relationships with multiple women, just constantly looking for that affection and affirmation and whatever else might be there?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, and that's where the validation part comes in. Whereas I would say like using porn is just for the sake of numbing in the moment, which love addicts do. As much as I would say that I was probably a little more on the love addiction side, I definitely used porn to numb out when there was pain. So a lot of these addictions can have crossover, but what you're really trying to do is find a woman that can really validate you. And I think this is a whole nother, we could branch into this, but I think that men lack a lot of male validation right now.
Yeah.
And, and that was a big pain point for me, was that I just never felt good enough or validated enough from my father, that I was always kind of lacking something. And so I really looked to, you know, in the culture, right? I mean, you're seeing this on TV, sports ads. You're definitely seeing it on social media, although I avoided a lot of that. But that's a really prevalent thing. Is like, hey, men are validated by getting women's attention and by having sex. That's how you show you're really a man. Like, that's what someone like Andrew Tate's out there. He's not telling men. In fact, a lot of these more masculine influencers are out there like saying, get off of porn and go have sex. Like, go be a man, go get women,
Yeah.
right? And they're advocating for something of using women as a means of validating your manhood, right? Well, that's where I think love addiction really hits for men. And what they're really longing for is intimate male connection, which these same masculine influencers would say, like, oh, well, that's feminine, right? Like, you're being feminine if that's what you're seeking out.
Hmm. Where do you think that comes from? Like, why is there a gap? And I'm not assuming that you have all the answers for this, but what I'm getting at is one of the things I think one of the ways that you're gifted is in the specific area where you do coaching. And just like the fact that you do this work with men day in and day out, like Nick and I, like, what do you see, if that's an easy place to pull from, in terms of the younger guys that you're working with? Like, where does that lack of male validation come from? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I think it comes from a culture that uh, kind of keeps us surface level, right? Like, social media is designed to keep you surface level and not go deep. Um, I think we're distracted, and so we don't like our intimate connection and relationship is very different because of our level of distraction. Phone, video games, like we're more screen related than we are actually relating to human. Um, and then I just think that there's been a real distance between fathers and sons. It presents definite challenges. I mean, for me, I there was like I felt through kind of the books I was reading, the way my dad kind of modeled being a man, was that to be a true man was to be very protected and defensive so that your emotions didn't show up. If you got emotional, that was a sign of that you were more feminine. And so you really guarded that. Well, that stunts any kind of effort for vulnerability and connection between two men if they can't share their emotions with each other, right? And so I'm thinking of one particular client who came to me who was, he by his church, he was labeled by his church as a sex addict because he'd had an affair. He confessed to multiple affairs. Um, and he went to a therapist specifically for sex addiction. And I don't know who the therapist was, but the way he kind of walked me through what happened was basically he was just given like a to-do list and of like, hey, you do these things and you'll experience recovery, which I think can be more helpful to like a porn addict, for instance, like get accountability, get into a group, get your phone locked down, all of these things. Um, but he just found it just felt off. Like there was no real curiosity about his story. Uh, and so when he came in to talk with me, that's kind of the first thing I do. I try to kind of see, okay, where are we in the present moment? That might take like one session, right? But then the next several sessions are going to be, let's dive into your story. What's going on here? And the more we go deeper into it, I was like, you know what? I think you've been misdiagnosed. I think you're more of a love addict.
Hmm.
Porn is definitely present there, but you find yourself bouncing from relationship to relationship. And if you're not in a relationship with a woman that's romantic, you are deeply desiring. And you find it much, much easier to open up emotionally with women than you do with other men. And so this guy in particular was very emotionally vulnerable with women, and like he was able to get to sex that was working for him. Um, but his friendships were not going very deep with men because he was scared to connect. And so meanwhile, he's going in these relationships and he just keeps running into this wall where he's like, man, this is just, it's not enough. I need something else. And so he would bounce off. It's like, oh, that's not the right person. And he just kept kind of bouncing around. And I think what we've really tried to work on is answering the question, like, why do I long so much for uh, emotional connection with women? And why am I so scared to have emotional connection with men? And as we dove more into that, it really kind of came to light in his early attachments that this very avoidant father and more of an ambivalent, um, dependent emotional connection with mom.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's while you were talking, that was sort of what was going through my mind. I was going to ask you if you thought that there was a particular attachment style that probably struggles with this more. My assumption was probably the ambivalent or enmeshed attachment style, just because of there's, boundaries feel destructive to relationships. Like if I have healthy boundaries, I feel like I'm actually actively pushing you away. And so if you're in that place and what you're needing is intense validation or maybe exaggerated forms of validation from women in relationship, you're probably going to push boundaries if there are any. And you're going to have a hard time holding to your own boundaries or probably other people's boundaries. And it can probably look like when the other person says, I'm uncomfortable with where we're going, and they try to put up boundaries, that's probably your red flag to go, okay, this person isn't working for me. I need to go find someone else. And it may not even be, you may not even be to sex yet. And it could be some resistance, right? Because it's like, well, this person is going to validate me and affirm me. And I've been working my butt off to show up and serve and convince you that I am this amazing, awesome person that I want you to believe I am. And when I don't get rewarded for it, I get crushed and I move on to somebody who will validate me for the work and effort I'm trying to put into this.
Yeah, well, and I think also validation from women is never enough, right? The
Yeah.
problem is that if that's what you're looking for and you're deceived, you're going to think, well, there's got to be someone out there that can do this for me. And you get stuck in that repetitive cycle, like the next person. And that's the thing, like the heat of the initial emotional connection with the woman, like that feeling of I'm in love. I think this is probably why you would see a lot of like Hollywood relationships be quick flames and then burn out real fast. Is right. That intent, like it is an incredible dopamine high to be falling in love with somebody. Anybody who's been married for like a significant amount of time knows that feeling doesn't last, right? Like life gets hard. And so what this man in particular is really looking for is validation from men. I would argue this is why, like, if you're married, you might notice that your wife dresses up when she's going to go out with other women, right? It's important for other women to validate her beauty and her femininity because that means something. They really know what it means to be a woman,
Yeah.
right? To have other men validate your work ethic and your consistency and your like the values that make you a man feels stronger. If you're looking for that validation from women, it's not going to feel the same because they don't know what it's like to be a man.
Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So earlier you said one of the one of the best things you can do is get into a group or recovery group that will probably be comprised of same gendered people. So if that's if you're a dude and you're in a male only recovery group, which I don't know why there would be a crossover or a blended recovery group. Maybe there is. I don't know. But yeah, having a group of guys who can get with you in the weeds of your story, into the depths of your soul, and really hear what's going on there, and still validate and affirm you, is I think what big picture brings healing, right? Because you can show up and you can be seen and you don't have to hide. At least that's the goal. And when you can show up fully and tell the truth about yourself and people still validate you, that's incredibly freeing. Because now you don't feel like you have to show up and wear a mask and be somebody that you're not, or live into exaggerated forms of what it feels like to be a man, where you're going out trying to hook up with women left and right because that's how you feel like you matter as a man.
I mean, I think that's exactly it. But then I think you also, in the groups, you have to work to have connection outside of just your 1 day a week meeting, right? So this is something I remember from Samson Society, which is a group organization that's out there. It was the real effort to have time where you go out and get beers, or you go watch a game together, or, you know, you build some camaraderie around just living life together rather than just talking about our brokenness all the time. We need that,
Right.
absolutely. But we need to develop the friendship too outside of that space.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I know you use Chip Dodd's date feelings, and we talk about that a lot. One thing I know I'll never forget that I learned from Chip was he made this comment. He's like, every man needs 2 to 3 men in their life. And that may not always be the same men. That may change, but you need 2 to 3 men in your life who know you inside and out, and you know them, to love one woman well. And his basic point there was like, you need that validation from men. If you're looking to have validation from your wife or from your girlfriend, or, you know, what's going to happen is going to be transactional. You're constantly going to be trying to do things for her so that she validates you, because she's never going to be able to give you the full validation that you need. So you're constantly going to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is men need men, women need women, and to a certain degree, we all need each other. But I think what we're lacking is the pursuit of the healthy male friendships. And this is something Nick and I have talked about off and on as we've been doing the podcast. It's like, it's of supreme importance, and I don't think people really give it as much attention and weight that it necessitates, because you need it. You just need it.
It's really risky, man. I don't want to minimize that. It's like to go up and ask a girl out is really risky for a guy. To go up and ask another guy to, hey, I need a friend. Will you be my friend? That's scary, right? They can say no. You can share vulnerable things, and they can, you know, mock you or make light of it or something, and that really hurts, right? But from my experience, what I've seen and what I've seen, you know, vicariously through my clients, is that other men out there really want this too. It's like one of those things that I think there's the C.S. Lewis quote at the start of friendship. I'm going to butcher this, but the beginning of friendship is like, what, you too? I would alter that a bit to say, like, what, you need a friend too? Oh, I need a friend. Like,
Yeah.
that's a common experience for all of us. You got to find somebody that's ready to take the risk.
Yeah. And I like that quote. I think you said it was from Chip, where he said 2 to 3 guys. It's not 10, it's not 15, it's not 100. It's 2 to 3. It's a very low bar, because that's what does it. So if and I know we have people from all walks of life who listen to this, and I know specifically there are a couple guys that I know that are personally current clients. 2 to 3 feels like a real big number, because they can't even really find one. And man, that's tricky. It's not easy, but like you said, you used my favorite R word, risk. It's risky, and it's scary, because like you said, you could face rejection. You could have people that don't want to be your friend for any number of reasons, but that doesn't change the fact that you need that in your life, and it's a worthy pursuit, and you have to pursue it, because nobody's going to pursue it for you. You might have somebody come to you and say, hey, will you be my friend? But I'm going to say the odds are probably pretty low. I don't really see that happening very often. But I can tell you this, if you take ownership over what you need, and then you take action to go get it, your likelihood of getting what you're after is way higher, substantially higher. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I realized early on in this work, and I can tell you, I did not like pursuing other men because it felt very vulnerable. And so I don't have it all figured out. I had to take that risk. But what happens is the more you're able to take that risk, the more you trust that the Lord will provide what you need. Right. And I think that's kind of when you see the call of Abraham, right? Like there's a tremendous amount of trust on Abraham's part in the space of decades to continue to pursue the call that the Lord will provide what he needs. And I really realized that with my pursuit of friendship. It was like, some people said no, right? That's just the reality. So, and it wasn't like an abrupt no. It was just kind of over time, they just quit responding. And they grew distant and they just weren't ready for the depth of relationship. And that was hard and sad. And I had to process my emotions through that. But you know what? I had to get up and I had to go again. Because
Right.
the alternative was to be on my own. Right. And I know where that takes me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Well, as we're about out of time, but as we're wrapping up here, what are like a couple just real quick, concrete things? If this is, where somebody's listening and they're like, how do I even start trying to initiate? Like, how do I find a friend? How do I look for a friend? What does that look like?
If you're in a recovery group, it starts there, right? Like, I would argue that friends are different a bit than sponsors. Friends and sponsors can be the same, but you need to have somebody that it's some mutual sharing. That's a friendship. If you're the only one sharing, that's more of a mentorship. Churches, places where you're going to find people. And look, church can be a dangerous place, absolutely, but there is a chance that you could find somebody there that's looking for that kind of open, vulnerable relationship. Yeah, I honestly, the first person I ever really truly, I think, learned friendship from another man was a refugee from Iran that I became close friends with. Taught me a lot about, like, he was the first man that wasn't family that said, I love you to me.
Mm.
And I said, I love you too. It didn't say, I love you, bro, right? Which is kind of putting that little man connotation. It's like, it's not the vulnerable love. I think you gotta be open to taking some risk and looking outside of the normal box that you might have of men that could be friends of yours. Some of my deepest friendships have been men that are very different than me.
That's good. What if, sorry, I know I'm peppering you with questions as we're exiting here. If I think I might have a love addiction, what's sort of my next step to sort of figure that out? What would be really helpful for me?
Well, I would say go talk to somebody, somebody who can help you navigate that. I think there are books out there on love addiction. I'm not for sure on this. I don't know how many are men oriented. Now they might be gender neutral. But women and men are going to experience love addiction differently because we're looking for different things out of that. Yeah. So I would say, if you really want to narrow down, am I more of a sex addict or am I more of a love addict? I think you're going to need probably some counseling, some coaching to kind of get deeper into that.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Rodney, thanks for your time today, man. It was good to talk to you. Hey, thanks for joining us today. If you found this helpful, do us a huge favor and subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Or, better yet, send this to someone who needs encouragement.
For more tools, resources, and information about our coaching, check out rscky.com. Keep showing up.
Yeah,
We'll catch you next time.